Ladies and gentlemen, the short video film which follows was one that was taken in April 1992 at Capilano Golf Club, featuring about 12 of our old-time members. Those attending were Mr. Ken Newbury, Mr. Peter Stanley, Mr. John Baldwin, Mr. Kenny Black, etc., etc., etc. List them all down. During the first run-through of the film, I shall identify the various members, and then in the second run-through, you can hear the comments which they have to make. Okay, out. Ladies and gentlemen, here are the attendees. Mr. Macauley at the back with Mr. Baldwin to his right, then Mr. Jack McIntyre, Holly Byrne, Dr. John McLean, and to the left, Mr. Kenny Black. Back to Dr. McLean, Mr. Holly Byrne, Mr. Jack McIntyre, Mr. John Baldwin, Mr. Alec Macauley. Mr. Peter Stanley with the glasses, panning left to Mr. Ted Wilkinson. Back to Mr. Stanley. Mr. Wilkinson again, then Mr. Brian Carter, the moderator. Mr. Ken Newbury in his tartan jacket. Mr. Doug Gallop, the club president at the time. Mr. Alec Macauley again, and Mr. John Baldwin on the left. These are the gentlemen who attended this session. Now at the table, we see Mr. Ken Newbury with his 47 years of service indicated. Ken is telling a story. Mr. Brian Carter, and to Mr. Stanley, 40 years of service. Mr. Black, 54 years. Mr. McIntyre, 49, and Dr. McLean, 54 years, our only remaining charter member. Mr. Holly Byrne, Mr. Wilkinson with the glasses, 47 years of service. Mr. Baldwin, also 47 years, with the scarf around his neck. Mr. Alec Macauley, 45 years, and Mr. Gallop, the president. Mr. Ken Newbury again. Mr. Macauley, Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Wilkinson, Dr. John McLean, Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Kenny Black, Mr. Peter Stanley, Brian Carter, Ted Newbury.
Crawford and Cliff Denham. Those of you who are on
Cliff Denham, that was a name I've been trying to remember all day.
Yeah, well, he was
Great big bruiser.
He was a big bruiser, and Jack Crawford needled him to the point where they had a
fist fight.
Cliff Denham.
I had to break it up. I had to help to break it up.
Yes, I guess maybe you did.
Yeah, but that wasn't as good as the one between Ed McDougall and Ron Hungerford.
Ahmed Pugh, who was a guy, no great shakes, but he was a character.
Were you here? I must mention about Med in the crap games.
I was there.
Just quickly
I'll tell you
touching on it, and I'll say no more. One saying that was made by Gordon Bowers, which I've never forgotten and is often repeated by some members of the club will remember. I used to have
British Pacific property for 6 months, and the other 6 months under the membership. And at one meeting, you heard, who was it said somebody, Billy McKenzie used to throw the odd application into the basket. Well, we were very interested in membership, and we had an agreement that we would not vote on anybody we didn't know. And up came an application, and all it said on it was General Old Timers. The proposer was my father-in-law, Victor Spencer, and it was seconded by Frank Ross, who was the Lieutenant Governor of the province. Well, you can imagine what happened to my phone the next day when they got this thing. Colonel Spencer called me asking what the hell we were trying to do. And I said, explained that we had rules and regulations that I was obligated to follow, just like the Vancouver Club does, knowing that he was a pretty ardent member there. So he said, well, what can we do? Well, I said, as long as the entire board for dinner. And we had a hilarious evening, and it turned out that it was General Sir Oubry L. Roberts with a flock of initials after his name.
Addition to the tape in black is just to advise you that an audio tape of the full proceedings lasting probably an hour and a half was made at the time and could be used in conjunction with this tape. The audio tape is much more meaningful because of the stories, but the videotape, of course, allows those of you down the road many years to be able to identify the gentlemen who were in attendance. Okay, out. Jack McIntyre, 49, Kenny Black, 54, Peter Stanley, 40, and back to Ken Newbury, and I shall now shut off.